Can a movie where quote-unquote nothing happens actually be the greatest Mexican comedy ever made? In a country that's a global powerhouse in comedy? It's a black and white film, just another Sunday. Two teenagers, a small apartment, and a pizza that never shows up. And somehow, that's all it needs to become an unforgettable story. No special effects, no action scenes, no massive budget. What it does have is something more lasting, a feeling that sticks with you. It's funny, but also tender in ways you didn't expect. Quietly sad and like a mirror, showing us who we were right before we stopped being kids. Today, I want to talk about Duck Season, Temporada de Patos. In my opinion, the greatest Mexican comedy ever made. Some movies make you laugh, others make you think. This one does both, without ever leaving that tiny apartment. And that anywhere in the world, but especially in Mexico, is something truly extraordinary. Because let's be honest, Mexico is a global force in comedy. And it's not just talent, it's craft. For decades, Mexican humor has been both tradition and technique. It's been a school, but it's been a style too. We've proven it in every format. Chespirito became world famous with El Chavo del Ocho. And even if we don't always see it that way, El Chavo is a sitcom, a situational comedy. A series that is still airing, dubbed in languages from countries that we didn't even know existed. In stand-up, Polo Polo was a giant. He had a brilliant memory, deep cultural references, and a comedy style that wasn't just about punchlines. It was about the journey, kind of like Steve Martin did in the USA. In sketch comedy, Eugenio Derbez took things to another level with his memorable characters. But comedy isn't the only thing Mexico does well. We're also a country of legendary filmmakers. Beyond the golden age of Mexican cinema, with giants like Spanish-born Luis Buñuel, El Indio Fernández, and Roberto Gabaldon, we now have a golden generation of modern directors, starting with the three Academy Award winners, Alfonso Cuarón, Alejandro González Iñárritu, and Guillermo del Toro. True masters in every sense of the word. So, if Mexico is this good at filmmaking and this good at comedy, where are our great comedy films? Why is it that modern Mexican cinema is mostly known for making disposable comedies, to say the least? The kind that might entertain, but don't go much further. Films that stick to very familiar plots, usually romantic ones with characters that feel interchangeable, with very similar color grading and the same formula over and over. In other words, comedies without a distinct voice. The kind we'd call rom-coms or chick flicks. Fun, yes, but ultimately forgettable. So where are the comedies with something to say? To be clear, great Mexican comedies do exist. Every now and then, one shows up with a voice of its own. And I'm not just talking about the classics from Cantinflas or Capulina. Though some of those Capulina films were shot in just 3 or 4 days, they still worked. We had films like La Ley de Herodes, a razor-sharp political comedy, and Matando Cabos, which blends humor with crime. And surely we've had many more. And they may not try to please all the masses, but hit deep with those who connect with them. I mean the kind of movies that don't just make you laugh, they make you feel. And for me, Duck Season, Temporada de Patos, is one of those rare films. Quiet but unforgettable. It doesn't spell out a moral or try to teach you a lesson, but it stays with you. It's a movie that proves you don't need a big budget to tell a great story. Sometimes all you need is a strong voice, a bold idea, and one small room where it all takes place. Welcome to my channel. I'm Bandido. If you've seen these videos before, thanks for coming back. And if it's your first time here, I'm glad we met. This is a space where I talk about films, shows, books, or any cultural story that I find interesting. Not just because of what it tells us, but because of what it reveals about us. Around here, I use storytelling as a mirror, a tool, and a compass. Welcome. To understand Duck Season, we first have to talk about its director, Fernando Eimbcke, a 2-time Ariel Award winner. He's one of those rare filmmakers who doesn't just have an incredible craft, he combines it with a unique sensitivity. The kind that doesn't need to shout because he trusts the audience, knows how to listen. Before making films, Fernando Eimbcke directed music videos. And not just any videos, but some of the most iconic ones from professional Mexican bands. And that's where things get interesting, because we're talking about the MTV era, back when watching music videos on TV was a ritual. You gave them your full attention, because you didn't know when would you be able to watch that video again? And a great video could define your day, or even your entire teenage years. Mexico, back then, wasn't just participating. It was competing with the best in the world, at least at a local level. Because on the same channel, you could hear a band from your city going head-to-head in the most listened videos with groups from all around the globe. Sure, we had a fraction of the budget, but in creativity, they didn't ask anyone for permission. Eimbcke directed for major Mexican bands like Zurdok, Molotov, and Natalia Lafourquetina, a standout video shot in a single take, his signature move. He also directed Enséñame by Morbo, which was banned from airplay for being morally inappropriate, an incredible video set entirely inside an elevator. His catalog of music videos is both vast and iconic. He directed Imagina by Genitalica and both versions of Jumbo's classic Siento Que. And of course, there's the video of Mr. P. Mosh by Plastilina Mosh, featuring a special appearance by the legendary vedette Lin May. And here's a fun fact. Alejandro Rosso, one of the members of Plastilina Mosh, would later compose the incidental music for Duck Season, the kind of music that comes naturally from within the scenes. It might seem like a random connection, but it actually builds a quiet bridge between the two worlds, the world of a music video and the world of cinema. Because what's most striking about Fernando Eimbcke isn't just that he came from music videos, it's how he brought that experience into film. Because usually, and we've seen this many times, directors from the world of music videos arrive in cinema with an obsession for quick cuts, fast pacing, and visual overload. Films like Everything Everywhere All at Once are direct descendants of that language. Rapid editing, saturated visuals, and non-stop momentum. But Eimbcke made a very different choice. He turned down the volume, held the camera still, and gave his characters space to breathe. Where others crammed the screen, he stripped it down to only what was essential. And the result is extraordinary, because there's something deeply bold about making a film that doesn't try to dazzle the audience, but to be with them. A film that doesn't rush to impress, but instead slows down to understand. In Duck Season, Fernando Eimbcke turned something as simple as a Sunday afternoon into a work of art, and it all started on MTV. So, what's Duck Season about? It all begins like any ordinary Sunday. The story follows two teenagers, Flama and Moco, lifelong friends from Mexico City. One is the quiet type, and the other one is always joking. They know each other so well, words aren't even necessary anymore. Their favorite phrase of the moment is "Me vale pito," a very teenage, very early 2000s way of saying "I don't care." They're hanging out in Flama's apartment in the Tlatelolco housing complex, flipping through comics and playing video games. The day feels like nothing special. No adults, no homework, no plans. Just the two of them, and a double cheese pizza on the way. They're playing a video game when suddenly the power goes out. And when the power goes out, the game cuts off. And when the game cuts off, so does the little bubble where it felt like nothing could ever change. And that's when real life, the real life, starts to creep in. First comes Rita, their neighbor. She's a bit older, and she comes into the apartment saying that she needs to use the oven. It's her birthday, but no one at home seems to care. Then there's Ulises, the pizza delivery guy. He argues with them about whether the pizza should be free since it arrived late. No one wants to back down. No one wants to lose. No one has the money to pay. So Ulises decides to stay. And just like that, all four of them are stuck in the same space. Flama is facing a difficult decision. After his parents' divorce, he has to choose with which one to live. He doesn't want to talk about it, but he also can't stop thinking about it. Moco, his best friend, starts to feel the friendship slipping away. There's something else there, something he doesn't know how to name, a fear that if Flama leaves, he might lose him forever. Rita hides behind sarcasm, but it's obvious she feels invisible, especially today, on her birthday. And Ulises is a grown man who somehow sees more like a kid than any of the other ones. His dreams have gone nowhere, his job sucks, and the only thing he clings to is a lucky coin he carries like an arm. He tells them he used to work putting dogs to sleep at a shelter, and now he has a new dream, selling birds for pets. His eyes light up when he talks about it, but his voice already knows it's not going to happen. Then something unexpected happens. Rita bakes a cake using whatever she finds in the kitchen. She doesn't realize that one of the ingredients has marijuana in it. An innocent mistake, but it's the moment that strips away everyone's masks. That dead, uneventful afternoon loosens up. Not into a party, not into chaos, just into something real. A moment they didn't know they needed. They end up on the same couch, staring at the same painting on the wall, Duck Season. A painting they cannot seem to stop looking at. And there, in the stillness, through little conversations and long silences, these four strangers share something they never saw coming. A Sunday that changes them, without them even realizing it. A Sunday that, most likely, will be the last one they will ever spend together. Duck Season is a black and white film. And for a Mexican comedy in the 21st century, that alone is a strange choice. In fact, I believe that choice makes a lot of people not watch the film. Because at first glance, black and white feels too artsy. Like the movie might be too sophisticated or pretentious. But to me, the black and white is actually a clue. It's a good choice because once you watch the film, you realize what looks black and white on the outside, it bursting with color on the inside. Let's start with Rita. Rita has a little superstition. She believes that if she can guess the color of a candy called fresca, her wish will come true. She closes her eyes and says, green, she's wrong. And she tries again. Orange, wrong once again. And so it goes, trying to guess the color of something that we, as the audience, know that doesn't really exist. It's a wish that's never going to happen. A search that, deep down, she might not even believe in. That's Rita, a hurt teenager, ignored by her family. She says she just came over to use the oven, but really, she's looking for something else. She wants someone else to see her, to remind her that she's not invisible. Then there's Ulises. Ulises is an adult who, as we said before, feels more like a kid than any of the rest. He shows up as the pizza guy, argues like a teenager, and ends up staying. He tells his story with a strange mix of resignation and tenderness. When he sums up his life, he delivers one of the film's most iconic lines. Opportunities are like bullets in a shotgun. I already spent mine. Before he leaves, Ulises gives Flama his lucky coin and one last piece of advice. Don't put it in the microwave or it will get soft. A joke, sure, but like the best jokes, it holds a painful truth. A quiet warning that not everything survives the passage of time. And at the heart of it all, there are the two boys, Flama and Moco. And speaking of color in a film where color doesn't exist, there's one small but meaningful detail. Flama is a redhead. It's explicitly mentioned in the film. Even though we don't see it, because the movie's in black and white, we remember it. The color is there, hidden. Not meant to be seen, but imagined. As if the important thing isn't what the image shows, but what it invites us to feel. And now, let's talk about the symbol that gives the movie its name, Duck Season. It's a painting hanging in the apartment, showing ducks floating on a lake and one of them flying. At one point, all of the characters look at it. Symbolically, the duck is a strange creature. It looks harmless, but it's aggressive and territorial. It might seem clumsy, but it survives in all three elements. It swims in water, walks on land, and flies through the air. It's a being of transition, a liminal animal, just like the characters in this story, each one caught in some kind of transformation. Kids who aren't quite kids anymore, adults who aren't ready to grow up. All of them stuck in that season that has no name, but that we've all lived through. That moment when we know something is about to change, but we're still not ready to let go. I'm not sure if that's why they keep looking at the painting, but it's worth noting that, just like the ducks, they're all resisting the current, and maybe, deep down, still dreaming of flying. Duck Season is a minimalist film, and that's not a flaw. In fact, I think it's its greatest strength. Almost the entire story takes place in a single location. A small apartment in the Tlatelolco housing complex. A space without luxury, without movement, without mystery. Just four white walls, a kitchen, an old couch, and an even older TV. And a window that barely lets the afternoon light in. There are a couple of scenes outside, a memory of the dog shelter where the pizza guy used to work, and a few shots of the streets. But the heart of the movie never leaves that room. Everything happens there. Everything that matters, and everything that changes. It's a film of interiors, not just physical, but emotional. one afternoon, two teenagers, a neighbor, a pizza, and the pizza guy. That's it. Some would call it radical minimalism, but it's really something simpler. It's a film that trusts. It trusts its characters, its silences, its pauses. A film that doesn't feel the need to turn up the volume, because more than anything, it trusts us. Duck Season doesn't fall into the usual screenwriting trap that pros call raising the stakes, the typical movie in commercial cinema where the conflict keeps escalating to hold your attention, where there have to be explosions and the threats needs to get bigger and bigger every time. Now the fate of the entire universe hangs in the balance. We've seen it many times, and it gets exhausting. So back to our movie. There are no villains here, no epic battles, the universe is not at stake. Instead, there's something much more subtle, and I think more real. The possibility that a friendship might change. The sadness of a birthday no one remembers. The quiet burnout of a life where second chances are running out. Fernando Eimbcke doesn't need his characters to save the world, because he knows that sometimes the heaviest world is the one we carry inside. And he tells it all with one of the most powerful tools in storytelling, dramatic irony. That's the technical name, dramatic irony. It's when we, the audience, know something the characters don't. And in Eimbcke's hands, it's used not only to build suspense, it's used masterfully to create tenderness. Here is the first example. Moko tells Flama he kissed Rita. He says it with total confidence. But we, who actually saw the scene, know it was Rita who kissed him. A classic kid movement, exaggerating our wins, and also just a little heartbreaking, because it reveals a quiet fear we all carry. The fear of not being enough, of losing, of not knowing how love even works. Here's another example. The pizza guy tells Flama and Moko about his plan to get rich selling birds as pets. He says it with so much excitement, a spark in his eyes we hadn't seen before. But we know. We know that plan is not going anywhere. There's no money, there's no bird pets, no real chance. It's a dream that's never going to come true. And then there's the best use of dramatic irony, the one that surrounds the whole movie. Moko and Flama know that Flama is about to move out, that he may leave, and they have the information, but they don't really grasp what it means. They believe, like only kids can, that things won't change too much, that their friendship will stay exactly the same, that nothing will break. But we, watching from the outside, understand what they can't quite face, that this Sunday is the last one, that this pizza was part of a moment that later on will become unforgettable, that this quiet afternoon is the end of an era, and that sometimes those Sundays never come back. There's a lot to learn from Fernando Eimbcke's work in Duck Season, and many of those lessons echo throughout his other films, which are gems in their own right. Let's start with one of the biggest misconceptions about creativity, especially in film, and that's the idea that more is always better. More money, more characters, more explosions. But sometimes, true creativity isn't about adding, it's about subtracting. It's in limitations that we often find our greatest source of imagination. Fernando Eimbcke puts it better than anyone. In an interview, I heard him say something worth quoting on full. Filmmaking is about resources, the elements you can handle. You can work with massive post-production tools, or make small films by design using just a camera and sound. There's this idea tied to creativity, that when you have a dream or a great idea, you expect the world to give you everything, because it's your big vision, because you deserve it, because your idea is brilliant. And sure, maybe you can do that once, ask for favors, pull some strings, but after that, you've got to find a way to get it done on your own. It's a brutally honest lesson, and a necessary one. The world doesn't owe us anything for having ideas, but we also don't need permission or perfect conditions to bring them to life. Too often, we confuse ambition with scale. We think a story matters more if it costs more locations, more drones, more effects, more stuff. But what Eimbcke reminds us is that a story's value lies on how it's told, not in the size of the budget, but in whether the story can echo in someone's heart. Duck Season is a small film by design. Few locations, a handful of characters, just enough to tell a tight story. And in that restraint, it found its voice. And Eimbcke is not alone. Minimalist cinema of which Doc Seasons is a clear descendant, has deep roots. Eimbcke himself has cited major influences that live by these same principles. Italian neo-realism, where kids walk through bombed-out streets, not as a metaphor, but because they had no money to build sets. And there's the French New Wave, with handheld cameras shooting in real cafes, with actors who weren't even actors. And then there's the Russian school of montage, born not from theory, but from necessity. They had just 2 pieces of film and had to find a way to splice them together so they meant something. That's creativity too. Not excess, but intention. Doc Season isn't just a great Mexican comedy. It's a masterclass in how to say the most with the least. A small film made with just enough resources, yet its message stays with you long after it ends. Doc Season is a comedy, but not the kind that makes you laugh out loud every 5 minutes. It's more like that kind of story that a friend tells you quietly, almost by accident, and it stays with you. And you laugh, yes, but more than that, it lingers. And the next time you see that friend, you ask them to tell it once again. This film comes from a director who chose not to dazzle with speed, but to slow down. A filmmaker who came from the world of music videos, and instead of going bigger, chose to go smaller. And through that, found something honest. It tells the story of an afternoon that seems like nothing, but if you really watch it, you realize it's the last afternoon before everything changes. The movie is built with almost nothing. A single apartment, 4 characters, a plot with no real twists, but it's full of symbols. The frescas candies with colors that doesn't exist. The lucky coin that never brings luck. And of course, the duck painting on the wall. And behind all of it, there's a lesson they don't teach you in film school. To tell a great story, you don't need anyone's permission. You just have to pay attention. So let's talk about what this movie actually gives us. Near the end of the movie, Ulises, the pizza guy, gets a phone call. It's his boss, the one from the job he hates, and he scolds him about the delivery and fires him on the spot. But instead of panicking, instead of getting angry, Ulises says something he could never have said at the beginning of the movie. He tells his boss, "Me vale pito." The very same phrase he heard just hours earlier from Flama, that quiet teenager who refused to pay for the pizza, but who also listened to him talk about his job putting dogs to sleep, his dream of selling birds as pets, and his missed chances, his broken hopes. And sure, in another context, "Me vale pito" might just mean "I don't care." But here, it becomes something more, a declaration, a sign that Ulises has changed. Because now, he's not speaking out of anger, he's speaking out of a small, private moment of awakening. And for just a little while, he believed his dream might still be possible. And maybe, if opportunities are like bullets in a shotgun, he still has more left in the chamber. And that's enough. So when we see him at the end, riding his motorcycle through the city at night, we know that he's unemployed. We know he probably won't see Flama or Moco again. But we also see that, strapped to the back of his bike, he's no longer carrying pizza. He's carrying the duck painting. And I won't try to overanalyze the ending, but I can tell you this, I felt it. Because Doc Season isn't about what happens, it's about what you feel while it's happening. It's not a story of big events, it's a story of small revelations. About how a power outage can turn the lights on inside. About how a paused video game can open up a conversation that no one wanted to start. About how a regular Sunday can become one that you remember forever. And if when this movie ends, and this video ends, you're left with a feeling that something shifted, even if you can't quite name what it was, then Fernando Eimbcke did his job. If you like this video, subscribe. And if you don't, me vale pito. I write a letter every week, and if you like these videos, I think you'll enjoy reading those letters too. I send them out through my newsletter. Well, I used to call it a newsletter, but that word sounds too much like marketing. So from now on, I'm calling it what it really is, letters from Bandido. Because honestly, I love sending and reading letters. One of those letters, one I wrote to my niece for her birthday, is actually how I met my associate, Adrian Marcelo. He read it, we became friends, and the rest you probably already know about. If you'd like to receive letters from Bandido, subscribe at bandidowriter.com. When you subscribe, you'll get the exact birthday letter, the one that caught Adrian's attention, and maybe it will speak to you too. And if you want to help to keep this channel alive, hit subscribe or drop a comment, telling me what you'd like the next video to be about. That makes all the difference. For today, that's all, compadre. See you next week.